became your pastor, I made a promise to Greg that I wouldn't talk about our home life too much during my homilies. But I think he will be okay with my sharing this one little thing. Greg's favorite TV show is Judge Judy. And so at our house, Judge Judy comes on 3 times a day. And when I watched Judge Judy, I noticed that many of the cases, many of the disputes are between landlords and tenants. Now, sometimes it's that there's a bad landlord who's really taking advantage of his tenants. But more times than not, the case is about bad tenants. People who were given a place to live that didn't belong to them, and they abused that place. They punched holes in the walls, or put cigarette burns in the carpet, or had wild parties. And we hear that sometimes with people who check into hotels, and they trash the hotel rooms. A lot of times when there is no ownership, people don't feel ownership, they feel like, well, I don't really need to care for this because it's not mine, I don't own it. We see that sometimes with employees. They will say, well, I don't really care, I mean, I'm not the owner, the money's not going in my pocket, so I'm not going to be really invested in this because I don't own it. And that's really what this parable today is about. Jesus is telling this parable of the tenants who were given a beautiful vineyard to take care of, and yet they abused it, and they did not give the owner his due. As you know, Jesus' parables are always about us. So we have to think, how are we good tenants, good stewards of what God has given us? Because everything that's in our lives, our planet, our bodies, our talents and gifts, they're all on lease from God. We don't own them. We are renters of everything, and we're owners of nothing. And you may say, well, that's not true. I own my house. But in Scripture it says, you come into this world with nothing, and you will leave this world with nothing. When you are gone from this planet, someone else is going to be the owner of your house. It's not going to be yours anymore. So what this parable is saying is that everything in our lives comes from God. God is the owner. And we're just tenants. We're leasing it. And our obligation is to take care of it for God. That's what we're called to do. To be good tenants or good stewards. Now the word steward, some of you are familiar with, say, the word stewardess. They used to call flight attendants stewards and stewardesses. And their job is to take care of the plane. They are to provide comfort, but they are also to provide safety for the people on that plane. The stewardess, the steward, the flight attendants, they don't own the airline. The $200 that you paid for your ticket doesn't go in their pocket. But they are to be stewards for the owner. And oftentimes we think we're owners of things. Sometimes parents think they own their children. But your children aren't yours. You are to care for them. You're responsible for caring for them, but they're not yours. Same thing with our pets. I think of a little kid that says to his parents, I want to have a puppy. Let's get a puppy. And the parents are really good at saying, do you realize that you have to feed this puppy, you have to take it for a walk, you have to clean up after it, you're responsible for it. And we think that sometimes, again, with our relationships. You know, in days of old, that was that the husband felt that he owned the wife. And we realize that the relationships we have in our lives are a blessing from God. And they're just here on loan. And it's our responsibility to care for them and to nurture them. So what we want to do is we want to remember that God trusts us. You know, on our money it says, in God we trust. But it works the other way too. God has put his trust in us and says, I've given you this beautiful planet. I've given you these bodies to enjoy the planet. I've given you gifts and talents to bring you abundance. But are you using everything? And are you being good stewards and good tenants of everything that I've given you? I saw a sign once, which I really liked. It was up in someone's house, and it said, your life is God's gift to you, and what you do with your life is your gift to God. I really liked that. We've been given so much, and what we do with that is how we then gift God. I want to get back to this tenant-landlord analogy, because I think it works so well with us and God. When someone is looking for a new apartment or a new house, they often say, I'm looking for a place to live. They don't say, I'm looking for a new dwelling or a new place of shelter. The words we use say, I'm looking for a place to live, because this is about life. So we're the tenants. And what do tenants do when they find a place to live? They sign an agreement, a lease agreement. And we have signed a lease agreement with God. That's why in the scriptures you hear so much about covenant. We've made a covenant with God that says, I get to live in a beautiful planet. And I get to enjoy this wonderful body. And I get to use these amazing talents I've been given. And I get to enjoy all these relationships with people and with pets. And in return, because it's an agreement, in return for all of this, I will be a good steward of what you are leasing me. I will take care of all of these things. The planet, my body, these relationships, my gifts. I'll take care of them and I'll nurture them for you. Because you are the owner of these things. Not me, you are. And so I am doing that for you. So let's look at those things just really quickly. Our bodies. Our bodies are just on loan to us. They're the way we get to enjoy the world, to look at a beautiful sunset, to eat delicious food, to listen to the voice of a loved one, to touch them. If we are good stewards of our body, we get to live life to the full. But if we do not take care of our bodies, if we don't eat the right things, if we don't exercise, what happens? We have to face the consequences, which means we're going to be in pain and discomfort. Same thing with the earth. We at Douglas UCC, you'll see that part of our motto is that we're a whole earth church. And that means that we're a congregation that is committed to caring for the planet and for the earth's resources. When we don't care for the planet, we have to face the consequences. And we are. Obviously, we see what's happening with our world, with climate change. And then our spirit has also been given to us by God. We need to be good stewards of that. If you don't take care of your spirit, you have to face the consequences, which means you're going to be anxious, you're going to be worried, you're going to be fearful, you're going to be angry. So we have to remember that when we're good stewards, we get to enjoy life to the full. Now think about the tenant who breaks his lease, who doesn't do what is expected of him, and gets evicted. The landlord didn't do anything wrong. The tenant did something wrong. The tenant didn't live up his end of the agreement. And so if you have been given this beautiful life, and yet you are so unappreciative of God for all that you've been given, and you're not giving God the credit and the due, then your life is going to face those consequences, where you are not going to be living life to the full. Jesus said, I have come so that all of you may have life and have it to the full. We hear in the first reading from Exodus today that Lynn read for us the 10 Commandments. And it's like breaking the lease agreement. When you break the commandments, it's like you are evicted from life to the full. When you follow the commandments, you have this rich inheritance and this abundant life. And I think that's why Jesus in today's gospel also talks about the cornerstone. You know that the cornerstone is the first stone that is put in place. And all the other stones in the building are set from that first stone. So that first stone is the foundation. We have to make God the foundation of everything. Of everything we build, God has to be the foundation. And when we have that, then we are in covenant with God, and we get to experience, as Jesus says, this full life, this rich inheritance, this abundance. Now, we have been gifted with this beautiful church and this beautiful piece of property, not only here, but over at the retreat house. And we know that they are on loan from God. We don't own them. We are here to take care of them, to be good stewards of them for God. The 34 people who became new members today, in essence, they signed a lease agreement with God that says, we agree to be good stewards of this church. And we will use our time, talents, and resources to do that. And as I mentioned at the top of our service today, the men and women in this room who for the past several years have been so dedicated and so faithful and such wonderful stewards of this church are now experiencing what was promised, this rich abundance, this wonderful harvest. In the scripture it says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in various forms. And I like that because each one of us has been given a different gift to use. But they're not to be used for our selfish means. They're to be used in service of God. And so we want to make stewardship a way of life. We want to every day be aware that this body, I'm a steward of, and I need to take good care of it. The earth, I need to take good care of it. And my spirit, I need to take good care of it and be a good steward of it. When we look at the gospel story, we know it's about us. We have been given a vineyard. And the purpose of the vineyard is that we tend it so that it produces and bears fruit for God. It's not for us, it's for God. So we've been given a vineyard to take care of together. And the good news is that we don't do it alone. We do it in community. I am so grateful to be tending the vineyard of this church community with all of you.